So in this video, you are going to learn exactly the same as a recent student of mine, how to swing slower, but get more distance and actually end up hitting the golf ball further. And it's actually really easy by just learning a couple of principles, which I'm going to share with you right now. So the first thing that you need to know is the backswing position. And what we're trying to do in the backswing position is just get the arms moving nicely to the side of the body whilst keeping the head still. See, the student in mind, and the big thing that kind of really consumes lots of amateur golfers, is that they tend to move off the golf ball and the arms get too close to the body in the backswing position. What we're looking to do is try and keep the head still and get lots of width where we feel like we're getting the arms further away. A couple of ways you can do this. The first one is that we basically had a conversation about swinging the club on plane. And what I sort of talked about with the student is I said, look, in the takeaway, we're just trying to move the arms to the side of the body. And if you can move the arms to the side of the body as I'm demonstrating here, the club face will stay nice and square. So if you like, roughly perpendicular to the line that I'm drawing here. Theoretically, if we can have a good backswing and then bring the club back down here in the downswing, again, the face will be squarer. A squarer club face is going to give us much better strike, which is going to obviously in turn lend itself to much more consistency and more distance. What was happening with the student is he's kind of moving off the ball, club was coming down, getting the stuck under plane, and you can see the difference. You start moving like this, you see the club face is wide open, and the only way you can square it is to really sort of flip your wrists at it, which is obviously going to cost you a lot of distance. So we spend a bit of time understanding the concept of plane, and then a great way you can do this as well is just take hold of the alignment stick, place it underneath the actual club itself, and just sort of practice keeping it in contact with my lead hip, and then just let your right arm fold onto plane and then bring it back down on towards your lead hip. Doing that type of motion quite simply is going to help you keep the club on plane, help you keep your head nice and still, get good width in the backswing, but also what it's going to fundamentally do is keep the club face much squarer, which will mean less effort, more distance, better smash factor, which basically means good efficiency of strike. So we did that, and then we moved on to this type of exercise. So when golfers tend to get themselves in a mess in the backswing position, they tend to sort of get quite messy in the start of the downswing. And again, the student in mind just sort of stay back on the ball. Got the wrong idea that he's supposed to stay back and throw his arms at it, and just was lacking rotation. So a simple drill that we did, and I'm going to highlight using my hands here. I'm going to place one hand through my sort of stomach region, and the other hand pretty much through my pelvic region. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to try and concentrate on keeping my head relatively still. Now, what I mean by relatively still is my head can move slightly from right to left, but it can't wander off in this type of direction. Okay, so it can move a little bit from side to side. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to rotate in the backswing and rotate in the downswing. Now, the big thing for the student was learning this motion here. See the way that I am keeping the back of my hands pointing down, and my hand on my chest region is also pointing down to the floor, especially compared to somebody who's here. This is very much a downward and to the lead side feeling in terms of a rotational. Now, the reason why this is so important is because, again, it lends itself to strike. You see, when you turn your body, as I'm demonstrating here, what it does is it means that you're going to stay over the golf ball. If you sort of have a tendency to move more this way, then obviously you're going to struggle. So you just want to quite simply just do a few repetitions. You can do this in front of the mirror where you are trying to rotate as I'm demonstrating. So you feel like the back of your hand is moving across and the back of your chest is moving across. Or if you wanted to, you could also use a club. You could stick it in there, grip down on it so you keep your arms straight, and just practice that down rotation so you can see where you're pointing. But for me, it's enough to do this drill just to get a sense of feeling. You should feel like you're really rotating, and you should also feel like you're pointing more downward. And when you start to do that, you'll also start to get much more weight pressure moving underneath that lead leg. But like I say, what you're starting to do is by avoiding any mistakes in the backswing and starting the downswing with a nice amount of rotational movement is lending yourself to something which is going to be really good. Again, something that the student recently discovered. So finally, we had a backswing where the golfer was here and a downswing where there was no rotation, which meant that when he hit it, the arms were completely bent. So there was just no real compression, no real strike on the back of the golf ball, and it sounded similar to that. Now, when we were experimenting with staying a lot stiller and then understanding how to rotate, we were getting there. But because this golfer is so ingrained with these bent arms, what we had to do is we had to try and get the arms straightening. And that's why this drill is something that you really want to be practicing. All you need for this drill is just a bit of rope. and you're looking for something which is only a couple of feet long. Be careful that it doesn't go too long if you're to practice with this, because if you were to swing through and the length of the rope is too long, it will whack you in the teeth. And I promise you, if you go full pelt with this exercise, that would really potentially hurt. All we're doing with this exercise is you're basically just swinging back until the rope hits you on the back. It's acceptable with this drill for your lead arm to bend, and then you're trying to get the feeling of rotating both your pelvis and your chest, similar to that second exercise, and that's initiating the downswing and then straightening your arms through. On your back, turn through. On your back, turn through. And then it was really this feeling here of straightening the arms, and not in a sort of, stressy sort of hitting way, just in a sort of let your arms go, relax sort of way, Turn, let them go. Turn, let them go. And once we blended that together, then we were really getting into a good position. If you're somebody who really struggles with strike, that's what you're trying to do. The idea on this video, when we summarize it all, is that what we've done is we sort of worked on keeping the head still and getting the club moving back nicely on plane that keeps the face nice and square. Then as we start the downswing, what we were trying to do is just encourage a nice rotation. The rotation is very important to stay over the golf ball, but also what it does is when you rotate correctly, see the way my lead shoulder starts to move up and behind me. And if I can start to get that feeling, then I can experiment with that sort of sense of sort of straightening my arms as I come into this through swing. And that is going to lend itself to, when you time it, to much, much better results and more compression. It really is that blend of understanding just the angles, getting the rotation, getting the club up, rotate and drop it down on the back of the ball. It's just going to lend itself to much, much better ball striking, and the whole thing will just feel so much more effortless, exactly the same as the lesson we was in earlier today. See you soon.